Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday morning. We'll get started in a few minutes as folks are coming in. I see that folks are logging in. Welcome, welcome to today's info series session. Welcome, everyone. As we get started and as folks are logging in, I'll talk a little bit about what our info series is. Thank you so much for joining us. This series is designed with you in mind. We have a lot of topics that connect you with helpful information about services and tips that surround development services. In the past, we've covered topics like building under home. We also have some property maintenance tips. We had one about spring cleaning. I'll share the link in the chat so y'all can take a look at them. In that link, you'll be able to see some of the links for our past sessions. Again, we had building under home, we had home maintenance tips, we had a session on homestead permitting, and then we just had one last month on zoning and zoning requirements and the difference between zoning and land use and what that means for development. So make sure to check them out at publicinput.com/info series. You can check out it has a link to our public meetings page where we post all of our previous recordings and all of our previous sessions for this educational series that we have for our community. Each series the goal is to help homeowners and our community members feel more informed and empowered by bringing you our subject matter experts. We do subject matter experts from Development Services, which is the host of this series, but we also have experts from other departments that take part in the development process. And we bring to you people who know these services and who do these services every day to share their knowledge and answer questions on what you need to know. And so we have clear and useful information to help you navigate the process, to help you take care of your property, and to talk to you about the resources that we have and to get to know them a little bit too, because you get to see them and to meet with them and learn more about them. And so check out publicinput.com/info series. We also have a few upcoming ones that we've already published. We have one on the inspection process that is coming up. We have one on why codes are important. And then we have one that's coming up next month on what types of experts you might need to know if you are going through the development process. And so make sure to check those out. So we have one a month. And so make sure to miss them. And if you miss them, don't worry, we record them and we have those available on our YouTube. And also a link is available in our publicinput.com/info series. So we'll go ahead and get started. I see that we have a few folks in our attendees. So welcome everyone. You are tuning into Development Services, what we call Info Series. Today, we're going to talk about permit essentials. My name is Isis Lopez. I'm the engagement manager for Development Services, and my goal is to bring information to you and educational resources to our community members and to our applicant community. The topic for today is permitting essentials. We'll talk about high level, what is permitting, the different types of permitting. We have a few experts here, and then we also have a few details from Austin Fire and our city arborist. So with us in the room, we have Maria Jaramillo. She's our Development Services Manager. Scott Cochran, he's our Residential Building Inspections Division Manager. We have Colin Crawford. He's our Supervising Engineer with Austin Fire, so appreciate him joining in with us. We have Beth Culver. She's our Plan Examiner C with Austin Fire as well. They'll overview some information on their side as it pertains to permitting. And then we have Naomi Rotelmel, our city arborist, here in the room as well. So as you can see, we have a lot of experts in the room who are ready to share information on permitting and what you need and what the city of Austin requires. All right, next slide. Before we begin, I want to review what to expect today. So we're going to start a presentation from our experts. They're going to talk about the topics that we overviewed. And then we will have opportunities. If we have a lot of information today and we have a lot of folks in the room with us today. And so if we have time, we will have opportunity for you to ask them some questions. So there's two ways that you are able to ask the questions. So we have a question and answer session in Zoom. If you're not able to locate that, make sure to send me a chat and I'll help you troubleshoot where to find that question and answer portion. It's helpful to put it in the question and answer portion versus the chat. That way we can keep track of which questions we've answered and which ones we still need to answer. We hope to answer all of your questions, but again, we might not have enough time allocated for it. If we don't have time, we'll be able to catch those questions and we'll post a follow-up response. And again, we also might not have all of the information from our subject matter experts, but for those that we do not have the information or that we don't get to, we will send a follow-up response to the folks who attended. I will also like to note that the meeting is being recorded, so we're currently recording it right now. You will receive a link to the presentation and a link to the recording after this session. We also post all of our sessions along with a copy of the presentation on the site that I posted on the chat. That's publicinput.com/infoseries. All right, so now that we have a few housekeeping in check, we can go to the next slide, please. These are the topics for what we'll talk about today. We'll overview a little bit about what development services is. We have here guests from from building and trade and contractor services. We'll have information on applying for a building permit, what it means and why we require permits. And then we have information from our partners at the Austin Fire Department. And we have a lot of helpful information about what tree regulation means for the city of Austin. So two very important topics as they pertain to permitting. Next slide, please. And then we at Development Services, we're the ones that host this series. We are here to help you and help folks in our community and help our built environment. We help support homeowners, renters, business owners, and contractors. We help our community navigate that development process, and then we help them comply with local regulations. But again, we partner a lot with, we have about 13 partner departments, and today with us is Austin Fire Department that help, that are part of the development process. Next slide. All right, and with that, I'll turn it over to Maria Jaramillo, who is next on the queue. Maria.
Thank you, Isis. Hi, my name is Maria Jaramillo. I oversee building and trade contractor services, and we are here to facilitate permits for general contractors, licensed trade contractors, and homeowners, among others. Next slide. Building and trade contractor services has two groups within it. One of them is the commercial permitting and the contractor registrations team under Joshua Davis. And then we also have a residential permitting team under Jessica Server. Next slide. What we do. The Building and Trade Contractor Services plays a critical role in managing and regulating the construction and renovation processes in the city by providing a variety of essential services related to building and trade activities. BTCS is responsible for registering contractors. That includes general contractors and trade contractors, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, among others. We review and issue standalone permits that do not require plan review. BTCS facilitates online as well as in-person requests for construction-related approvals related to standalone and standalone building and trade permits. Next slide, please. The services we provide include, again, contractor registration and support, homeowner permits, or otherwise known as homestead permits for homeowners and homeowner registrations, standalone building and trade permits that do not require plan review, activation of building permits or issuance of building permits and trade permits, modification of standalone permits that do not require plan review or that have not been through plan review. Usually modifications of permits that have been through plan review require what is called a revision. Next slide, please. Best practices, we recommend a couple of things. We recommend knowing what work is exempt from permits. That is a pretty good list put together that lists out what work is exempt from a building permit. For example, some painting, tiling, carpeting, countertops, playground equipments would be some examples of what would not require a permit. Another helpful practice is to know if the work that you're doing does require a permit. We have a really helpful wizard, the do I need a permit wizard, and that guides you through several questions on whether or not you will need a permit from the city of Austin, or what type of permit you will need if you're outside the city of Austin, depending if you have services like Austin Water or Austin Energy as your utility providers. And then we want you to determine what type of project you have at hand. And after looking through the work exempt from permits, and if you're the do I need a permit wizard, just thinking about could the project need a building permit? Will it need plan review? Does the work include trade permits, or could it be just a standalone trade permit? Those are good questions to ask. Next slide, please. What is a building permit? A building permit is required to erect or construct a building or structure, enlarge or alter an existing structure, repair or improve a building, remove, convert, or relocate a structure, demolish any building or structure. All of these examples would require a plan review from residential plan review. Next slide. Homeowners permits or homestead permit. Homestead permits allowed homeowners who meet certain qualifications to perform mechanical, electrical, and plumbing trade work for their own homes. Work that is typically required for a trade contractor. There is a homeowner's permit page that we have, and that also has a very helpful wizard within it that goes through the qualifications. Some of those qualifications are that you have a homestead exemption through the pertaining appraisal district, that you live in the home, and that you are performing the work if you're requiring or requesting a homeowner or homestead permit. Next slide, please. How to obtain a building permit. Depending on whether it needs plan review or whether it's a standalone permit. If it requires a plan review, you would submit a building permit application to residential review intake. After those applications and plans have been reviewed and approved, the permit would be issued upon approval, and then my team would help the registration of the contractors, issuing of the permits, etc. A standalone building permit, let's see here, would be directly from our individual webpage, the BTCS webpage, by completing a web form, select our applicable permits, and it would be processed directly through us. Next slide, please. Approved. These are some things to consider. Before the work begins, your permit must be activated before any work starts. The applicant should receive an email from the residential plan review team guiding to the activated permit page, and that should guide directly to us at Building and Trade Contractor Services for the registration and the issuance of the permit. The general contractor is responsible for requesting activation and always to confirm that the permit is active before beginning any construction. Another thing to keep in mind is to keep the permit active. Permits expire if inspections are not scheduled. A passing or failed inspection extends the permit for 180 days. Any failed or no work performed or canceled inspections will not extend the expiration date. Next slide, please. What is a standalone permit? Standalone permits allow specific types of construction without a full building permit plan review. if the work qualifies. They're available for commercial, multifamily, and single-family projects with limited scopes of work. Keyword here is limited. The types of standalone permits are trade permits, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, simple repairs, changing out a water heater, updating the electrical service, replacing HVAC, etc. Standalone building permits include specific work like mobile homes in a mobile home community. There's a specific difference there because if the mobile home, for example, will be in a individual owned lot, that would go through residential plan review. But if it's a connection of a mobile home in a mobile home community park, that would be just a more simple request through building and trade contractor services. Retaining walls is another one for single family residents, assuming there's a site plan for the property. We also issue some special types of permits, such as backup power installations under SB 1202, and so on. Next slide, please. Slide, please.
Looks like we're having maybe some technical. Oh, there you go. Gotcha.
Thank you. What qualifies for a standalone permit? Again, it has to be either a standalone trade permit that's electrical, mechanical, plumbing, irrigation, etc. Usually, depending on how you're qualifying the scope of work that you have or the project that you have, if it requires more than one trade permit, it might be that you need a remodel permit, for example, and that would be a building permit with plan review. Another type of standalone permit is emergency trade repairs. For example, like I mentioned earlier, updating the electrical service or, HVAC replacements, water heater replacements, etc. We also issue standalone permits for standalone structures like boat docks and retaining walls with prerequisites like site plans. Some projects may still need plan review if the scope is larger or related to an existing permit, or if it involves more than one or two trade permits. Next slide, please. And finally, here, how to apply for a standalone permit. After you qualify the work, then you would create an Austin Build and Connect account, and you would register as a contractor with Building and Trade Contractor Services. What we do on the back end is link that registration to the AABC account, and then that will give you access to apply and pay through the ABC portal, depending on the type of permit that you are requesting, and then finally activating the permit. Next slide, please. If you need any assistance or have any questions or need help determining what kind of permit you might need, we encourage you to schedule a virtual or in-person appointment directly via our Austin Development Services webpage with the schedule an appointment link. Next slide, please. And now I'll pass it on to Scott Cochran, Division Manager for Building Inspections. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Scott Cochran. I'm the Division Manager for the Residential Building Inspection side. I'm here to talk to you about the natural process of flow of things. Essentially, after your building permit or permits are active, that is when this division will be there to assist you. Next slide, please. What do building inspectors do? Currently, we have 28 inspectors, full-time inspectors across the city. That would also include 4 field supervisors. It's broken up into 4 territories. If you can think about the way that I-35 runs north and south, and Ben White, south of the river runs east and west. we separate the territories in those quadrants, essentially northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. We have some information on our website as well, broken down into those territories, and you're able to find um, supervisors' contact information as well as your building inspector's information. Um, but let's get started on what building inspectors do. Building inspectors, first and foremost, help protect the community. Whether that be the homeowner currently residing in the residence or even for future homeowners. Um, by reviewing work at key stages of construction, beginning, middle, end, I mean, literally all the way through the construction project. Confirming projects meet safety standards and also building code. Ensuring permits are used properly. Um, if we are on site and you've added a little bit of work to your original scope. We'll be the ones to let you know if additional permitting is needed, or if you're okay to currently proceed with the current permit. Identifying issues early to prevent hazards. We do try to do our best. If we can see into the future and kind of notice that, as we start knocking out these different stages of construction, this is going to unearth it's going to unearth a hazard in the future. And so we'll try to do what we can do in the early stages of the construction project to further help you out, to keep you moving. Helping projects stay on schedule and compliant. It kind of goes back to what I was just saying. We are definitely not there to stop you from progress. I know that there's that nostalgia or there's that belief out there, but no, we are literally there to help you move forward. As long as there are no life safety issues keeping you from doing that, we will work with you to ensure that's possible. Next slide, please. What we do, why do we require permits? Excuse me. Again, safety of the occupants and neighbors. First and foremost, that's literally for your safety and welfare of you and your family. And what sometimes gets a little lost in the shuffle is, you currently own that structure. So, why do I need to comply with, let's say you put a pole in your backyard, why I don't have any kids, why do I need to comply with these alarm requirements? Well, we're not there just for the time being, for that snapshot in present time. We're there to also foresee in the future, will this be a hazard to someone else? Compliance with adopted building codes, fire and life safety protections as well. Proper installation of electrical, mechanical, and plumbing systems, and construction that meets structural standards. Next slide, please. Why should I get a permit? Living in the city of Austin is required by local city code. In some cases, it's required by state law, depending on what trade you're doing. Again, required under adopted technical codes. And getting a permit ensures your project meets safety and legal standards. I can't tell you how often we see, unfortunately, we come behind on the backside of an unfortunate homeowner that has hired someone to do work. They did it on their own, unpermitted, without oversight of an engineer for their plans, and now we're having to work backwards and uncover wallboard and so on and so forth. And then again, still including the oversight of engineers that costs $2,000 a piece. So it's important to do the right thing in the beginning. It'll work out for you and your family in the long run that way. Next slide. What do these codes cover? Kind of hit on the top three, what we have or what we have adopted. The International Residential Code, which covers construction, addition, repairs, and demolition of homes and townhomes. I believe moving should be included in that as well. But UPC Plumbing Code regulates installation, repair, and replacement of plumbing systems. And the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, which sets safety and construction standards for swimming pools and spas. Next slide. When a permit is required. When a permit is required is it is it's very broad, I would say. I kind of want to set the expectation before I get into these slides. I would fully encourage you to go on to the do I need a permit wizard that Maria was sitting on a minute ago. Try to get into our log in to view our land development code where we've amended the IRC and the UPC, and kind of get an idea, wrap your hands around what we actually do and don't require. But I try to hit on the more frequently asked questions when it comes to this. So when a permit's required, constructing, enlarging, altering, repairing, there's moving and demolishing of structures. If you're doing any of those things, the first question you should ask yourself is, do I need a permit? Go online and try to find those resources to determine that. And then of course changing of occupancy. Next slide, please. To continue, when a permit's required, installing or modifying electrical systems, plumbing systems, mechanical systems, gas systems. Permits must be obtained before the work begins. In emergency situations, you have, I believe, 24 business hours to, start beginning those stages of grabbing a permit. And again, I encourage you, there are certain things that you can do within these systems that are listed that you may not need a permit for. So it's a very broad, it's a very broad area of trying to figure out if you need a permit. So I just encourage you to go online. Next permit, please. Or sorry, next slide, please. Work exempt from permits for residential work. Again, just kind of touching on the more commonly asked questions that we get. For small structures, detached accessory dwellings, 200 square feet or less, under 15 foot tall. No plumbing. I would say no electrical as well. Not used as a living space. Fences and walls 7 feet or higher require a permit. Retaining walls less than 4 feet high. No surcharge or load. I would say retaining walls are always one that we get. You have to include the footing, which goes underground. You can't just measure from the grade up. We also take into consideration if it's supporting a load or not. Decks as well, 200 square foot or less, 30 inches above grade or more would require a permit. Not attached use for egress and not in a flood hazard area. Again, these are just some very, very common questions that we get. All this information you can find online or Land Development Code. Next slide, please. Yeah, residential minor work exemptions. Yeah, I'm not going to read through all of these. I would say site and exterior prefab pool 24 inches deep or less. That's a big one that we get quite often. Roofing exterior repairs. Another we get is if you're just replacing your asphalt shingles and you're not in a what we call a WUI area, wildland urban interface area, with 50% or more replaced. Those will not require a permit. If you're replacing your decking 120 square feet or more, it would require a permit. Interior and structural repairs. I think Maria hit on this a little while ago. Finishing work, paint, tile, cabinets, so on and so forth. Anything less than 120 square feet, 28 square feet, if it comes to your wallboard, foundation, or floor decking, all wouldn't require a permit. Garage door replacement, same size door replacement. Again, it's a wealth of information, and I would just encourage you to go on our website. And next slide, please. All right, that will be it for me, and I'll pass it along to Colin.
All right, folks. Colin Crawford, Austin Fire. I'm the supervising engineer. Next slide. Actually, next slide. We have Yvonne Espinoza, who's the managing engineer over fire prevention. She's here to observe. And then also later on, Beth Culver, plans examiner. She's our subject matter expert for wildland urban interface. So she'll be presenting. Next slide. All right, so fire prevention and at plan review, this isn't about inspections, it's about plan review. We get involved in plan review at 3 stages, really. We look at sites and subdivisions, could be replats, could be whole new subdivisions. A lot of single family homes don't have a site plan component, but some do. We also do the building review, actually reviewing the structure, the proposed structure. And then finally, if mitigation is required, we will do the sprinkler plan review. Next slide, please. Primarily in a subdivision, we would look for essentially access roads. We would look at the maybe the hydrants and some of the hydraulics of the site plan of the subdivision itself, and if there's any special conditions or special circumstances, we would take a look at those as well. One thing to be aware of is we do require that for a single family home that there has to be at least one hydrant, and sometimes more than one, within 600 feet. You have to be able to get from the hydrant to every portion of the outside wall of the home within 600 feet. And so if you have a condition where that's exceeded, we may require mitigation. So because it delays, essentially because it can delay firefighter response and the ability for the firefighters to respond to an incident. Next slide, please. For the fire lanes, we look at the fire lanes and roads. We're looking at the surface. The surface can affect, for instance, maximum slope. We look to see if it supports our apparatus structurally. We also have some minimum sizes, like the width of the fire lane or road, the overhead clearance. We have requirements for those, so our apparatus or fire trucks have the ability to get to the incident and the ability to leave, to get away from the site when they're done. Next slide, please. As I was mentioned before, at least one hydrant, if not 2, and it depends. So one hydrant, there's a minimum flow required of about 1,000 gallons per minute to fight like a small house fire. But as the size of the home, the size of the fire area increases, the flow demand increases. One hydrant can really only support a theoretical maximum of about 1,250 gallons per minute, which means if you have a flow demand of 1,750 gallons per minute because your house is more than 3,600 square feet, you're going to need more than one hydrant. So you're going to need 2 within that 600-foot distance. Let's see. Next slide, please. So flag lots are they're a site plan issue for single family homes that you might encounter. Flag lot basically it restricts the firefighter's ability to access the home and typically extends the distance. So we typically have to review those to determine whether or not there's going to be an issue. Next slide, please. We also have many places in the city that have inadequate flow. They don't have that minimum 1,000 gallons per minute, or possibly a higher flow, depending on the requirements. There are places that don't have hydrants or just no water altogether. So we'll take a look at those. And the main thing to understand here is that we estimate, or rather the code essentially requires a certain amount of water availability. So for a typical small house, the fire department could use possibly 60,000 gallons of water to fight that fire. If the house gets bigger, it could be something closer to 250,000 gallons of water. Where we don't have water infrastructure or it's inadequate, the fire apparatus has a small tank aboard, about 500 gallons. That tank they need to essentially ferry water from a water source to the house fire. So you can see it's a very resource intensive problem to fight that fire, which is why it's so critical to mitigate the situation where there's inadequate flow or inadequate access. Next slide, please. Some other special considerations. We have the wildland urban interface, which Beth will be talking about in a moment. Also, we do review houses in Austin's full purpose jurisdiction and limited purpose jurisdiction. We don't tend to review them in the ETJ. So please contact your county's fire marshal. There's several counties involved here to determine what the requirements are when you're in the ETJ. Next slide, please. So what I've seen is the most common reasons why a site plan or something would be rejected is if you had a flag lot and you didn't have a plat note for a sprinkler system, or you have in the WUI, this is as an example, any subdivision with more than 30 units, we require a second entrance and exit. This isn't, we don't typically make the comment, this is usually Austin Water, but sprinkler is sort of, excuse me, like an additional fixture. So it could increase your tap size, be aware of that. Next slide, please. When we get to the actual building review, we did look at flow and hydraulics at site plan sometimes, but we have to reevaluate it based on what you're actually proposing to build. So one of the first things we're going to look at when we get your plan is we're going to take a look at access. Within the fire code requires that that a fire department has to be able to get from the fire access road, basically where the apparatus, where the fire truck parks, to all portions of the outer wall of the building within 150 feet. There are some exceptions, some mitigations and exceptions. If it's a one or a two dwelling regime on one lot, we can extend that out a little bit. That distance, if you have a sprinkler, that's a mitigating factor. We can extend that distance out a little bit. Generally speaking, when we see what we're call the home amendment, the new third dwelling on a lot, I found that most of them, not all of them, but most of them, it's very difficult to fit a third unit on a single family home lot and not have the third unit be outside of that 150 foot access travel path. So it's something to be aware of that that the third unit will typically have some type of sprinkler requirement. We do look at things like, if you have a fence or there's topography, this can affect that travel distance. So we do look for those things. And you need to make sure that that's clearly shown on your plan so that we can evaluate whether or not those are affecting that access distance. And there are times when an alley can be your ally. When we can access the back of the lot from an alley, that helps. And another thing we do look at residential plan review is for propane. People want to install a propane tank. It is a hazardous material, and we do have to approve the location of that tank. Next slide, please. All right. One thing we are reviewing for at the plan review level is the riser location. We can't treat Central Texas the way it was in the past as a place that doesn't typically freeze. That's just not true anymore. We have a rash of broken pipes out there, so we are requiring the riser location to be freeze protected. The best way to do that is to put it inside, put it into literally rise out of the ground in a conditioned portion of your house. So we're asking you to show that on your plans. Next slide, please. Most common rejection items that I've seen for when we're reviewing a house for fire compliance is we either don't have a flow test or the flow test is expired, or we have inadequate access. So you're too far away from the point of fire department access, or we got that third dwelling. Next slide, please. Okay. Next slide. So When we review the system plans, this is for the sprinkler itself, we're reviewing it against the NFPA 13D standard for a single family home. We'll look at a lot of different things. I'm going to go over some of these details here. See if the floor plan matches what was presented in the architectural plan. To see if a professional has sealed the plans and it's dated properly. We look at this is critical. We look at the data sheets for all the equipment used in the sprinkler system to make sure it's listed appropriately for the purpose. And then we look at the plans. Next slide, please. We'll look at the plans to, sorry, go ahead and move to the next slide. Yeah, we also look at the plans to make sure that the equipment on the plans matches what the data sheets you've provided to show that it's appropriate. We'll go ahead and re-review the hydraulics. If your flow test is out of date, we're going to ask you to get a new one to make sure that the flow and pressure at the street is adequate to supply the system. We're looking again at the water line route. Sometimes the riser location changes between plan review and system plan review. That's understandable. It happens, but we do need to look at it to make sure that it still meets our code requirements. And then we'll look at the most demanding area in terms of what the sprinkler has to do. And then we'll look at your calculations to see if it's back calculated and the system will support it. And then finally, we do have a lot of places in town where there's no water infrastructure. So you're supplying that sprinkler from a well. So we're going to look at the tanks and the pumps to make sure they're adequate for the job and appropriate. Next slide, please. A lot of other details in the system plan review, the water line, the riser, the elbows, the pipe sizes, the valve locations. If your the sprinkler heads are the correct type, if they cover appropriately, if there's any overhead obstructions. We even look at structural, how they're hung, if there's any gauges or backflow preventers, pressure reducing valves. Next slide, please. So the most common rejection items we seem to see in a sprinkler plan review are the riser location and freeze protection, the spacing of the actual sprinkler heads, and hydraulic calculations are missing or inadequate. Next slide, please. I threw this in here. There's some uncommon rejection issues which do pop up now and again. In a 13D system, we can't share a water source, and you can't have your water line run through somebody else's unit. So if you've got a townhouse, which requires a sprinkler, or if you've got a duplex, it has to have an independent water supply. Basically, you can't share it. So it's something to be aware of if you're working on one of those projects. And I will turn it over to Beth.
All right, next slide, please. So I'm Beth Culver. I'm the lead WUI plans examiner with Austin Fire. You can go to the next slide. That's fine. So I'm going to walk through the basics of the Wildland Urban Interface Code permitting requirements. This code applies to areas in Austin that face a higher risk of wildfires. Our goal is to help you understand when the Wildland Urban Interface Code applies, what it requires, and how to prepare your permit submittal. So by the end of this segment, you'll know the 5 steps that you'll need to follow for any project in a WUI area. Next slide. All right, so the first step is simply finding out whether your project is located in the Wildland Urban Interface. The WUI, which we pronounce WUI, is where homes and wildland areas meet. On our website, you'll find a map that shows these areas, which is also displayed on the right side of this slide. So if your project falls into a light blue, dark blue, or green area, the layers are also labeled on the map if you're not able to see the colors. The WUI code applies to all of those areas. The colors represent areas with a higher risk of structure and community damage from wildfire spread. So you're always welcome to follow the WUI standards anywhere in Austin, but they're only required within these mapped areas that are in the light blue, dark blue, or green areas. And our website is shown on this slide. Next slide, please. So step 2, once you know your project is in the WUI, the next step is figuring out which zone you're in. Zone C is the areas in light blue or in the layer that's labeled Zone C. Zone A and B are shown in dark blue. And then green areas are currently wildland, which will become either Zone A, B, or C, depending on how much of the land you end up developing or leaving wild. If you're not sure what color you're looking at, you can always click on the map and a label will pop up. If your project is in a dark blue or green area, you'll also need to measure how close your structure is to the nearest wildland area that's planned to remain as wildland. The map shows wildland in green just to help you locate it, but the green layer is only an approximate guide, so you still must measure to the actual wildland edge and not just to the green layer on the map. You can do that on site. A good rule of thumb to follow is if an area isn't watered or mowed weekly, it's probably considered wildland. Next slide. So step 3 is understanding what the WUI code requires. Austin uses the International WUI code along with local updates that reflect our specific vegetation, our building styles, and wildfire behavior. So here's a quick breakdown of the requirements. Chapter 4 covers access, which is how firefighters reach your property, how you evacuate, and then how water is supplied. Chapter 5 covers ignition-resistant construction. This is where your zone matters. All zones follow the basic sections, and then each zone has additional requirements for exterior materials and openings. Chapter 6 covers vegetation management and the Ember Ignition Zone, which is a 5-foot non-combustible zone surrounding all new buildings in addition to existing buildings. And then Appendix A is another good place to become familiar with as it covers rules for things that create sparks or heat like fire pits, grills, and generators. So make sure to visit the WUI code website for a simplified guide that outlines the rules for each zone. Next slide. So step 4, determine whether your project needs a permit. Our website lists which projects are exempt from permits. This was covered earlier in the presentation, but keep in mind that even if a project doesn't require a permit, it still needs to follow the WUI code if it's in a WUI area. So one important note is if you're replacing more than 50% of a roof in a WUI area, outside of a WUI area, you might not need a permit, but within a WUI area, you must get at least an express permit, or if you have a larger scope of work, you can include the work within that permit. Outside of the WUI, again, some roof replacements may not even require a permit if they're not associated with another project. So there's only 2 types of projects that don't have to follow the WUI code at all. The first is small accessory structures under 100 square feet that are more than 50 feet away from another structure, as they pose less risk to the other structures as long as they're at least 50 feet away and small, so like a small shed. And then agricultural buildings that are also more than 50 feet from another structure. This would be more like farm type of agricultural buildings. Next slide. And then step 5 is preparing your permit submittal. Our online guide explains what you need to do for each type of application, whether it's residential, commercial, site plan, or subdivision. All applications have basic requirements, and each type has additional items that you'll need to include. For WUI projects, it's helpful to include an exterior material schedule that lists the products you plan to use and shows that they do meet WUI standards. We have a template on our website that you can use along with some sample notes that you can copy into your plans. During plan review, we verify fire test data for materials, so it's important to choose compliant products before you submit. If you need to change materials during construction, you will need to submit a plan revision, or you can choose from our list of pre-approved materials that is available on the WUI code website. Next slide. So to summarize WUI permitting, the 5 steps that you need to follow is first check the map to see if your project's in the WUI, identify your zone, review the WUI code requirements for that zone, check whether your project needs a permit, and submit your permit drawings and materials that meet WUI standards. Next slide. The resources that are available on the Wildland Urban Interface Code website include, but aren't limited to, the WUI map, plan review resources, the list of pre-approved materials I mentioned earlier, as well as FAQ. So thanks for taking time to learn about the WUI Code permit requirements. Following all of these steps helps protect your project, your neighbors, and our entire community from wildfire risk. I'm going to pass this along to our city arborist, Naomi Rotremel.
Beth, thanks so much. Next slide, please. Just a little history of the tree preservation ordinance. It was enacted by City Council in 1983 by one of our council members, Margaret Hoffman. And if anybody goes right outside City Hall, the little park in front of City Hall is dedicated to her. And then in 2010, City Council enacted the Heritage Tree Ordinance. So you'll see on this slide a little picture of what the city looked like in 1983, and then on your very right, what it looked like in 2010. Next slide. We'll talk about regulated trees in Austin. It's covered, the tree ordinance is in the Land Development Code 25A. Spells out which trees are regulated, when can you remove a tree, and under what circumstances can the city arborist permit the removal of the tree. Then it goes on to say that the rules that the city arborist shall develop the rules, which are located in the environmental criteria manual, and that explains what actions constitutes removal of the tree and how do I mitigate the removal of the tree. Next slide. Regulated trees in Austin, I do want to point out that the tree regulations do not apply in the ETJ. They only apply in the full and limited jurisdiction, unless it's a city project and some other exceptions. In the Land Development Code, it does spell out that removal means an act that causes or may reasonably expected to cause a tree to die, including uprooting, severing the main trunk, damaging the root systems, and excessive pruning. The rules in the Environmental Criteria Manual, Section 3, describes the methods to protect trees against damage during development. It identifies the actions that will constitute removal, identify the root areas, which we'll get into, that require protection against soil compaction and effects of impervious paving, and identify mitigation measures and methods of calculation for fiscal security to ensure performance of mitigation measurements. So we use mitigation a lot different than, say, the fire department does, and we'll get into that a little later. Next slide. Couple of paths where regulated trees go through the development process. It's either they're preserved, they must meet the criteria in the Environmental Criteria Manual 3.5.2, or they're removed, and then they must fall, that definition of when they can be removed is under the Land Development Code 258624. Next slide. You can find a lot of information on our homepage. If you do a simple Google Bing search, City Arborist, Austin, Texas, it'll land you on this homepage. We spell out the levels of the protection, and also we have a lot of helpful FAQs, instructions on applying for a permit, applying for an ABC account, which Maria mentioned earlier. And let's go to the next slide. Regulated trees in Austin. This includes all trees once they reach 19 inches in diameter, including ash juniper, invasive hazardous trees. Certain tree species are designated as heritage once they reach 24 inches diameter. It's in the LDC 258602. Those include the oaks, the pecans, the elms, the walnuts, and other trees. Palm trees are not regulated under the city ordinance. So yes, a hackberry is regulated. Yes, an ash juniper is regulated. Next slide. On our website, we have instructions on how to measure a tree. It's usually about 4.5 feet above grade, and it's accurate to the half inch. Next slide. And then there's also another way to, there is a way to measure multi-stem trees. You take the largest diameter, add up all the smaller diameters, divide it by half and add it to the largest diameter. So there are instructions on our homepage on how to measure a tree. Next slide. Back to going through the tree rules and the environmental criteria manual. Most damage of the trees occurs during the development process. Trees are protected both through review of plans and enforcement of tree protection on active construction sites. The tree preservation criteria are the rules the city uses to determine whether or not a tree is likely to survive construction, project, or other impacts. And these are based on best practices. If these criteria are not met, the tree is at significant risk to premature death, such as impacts that constitute removal. Many times trees after construction damage do not die immediately. It can take 1 to 3 years for them to die. So we do want to see the protection is up at all times. Next slide. Talk about impacts to trees, physical damage, disturbance to the growing environment, and some causes of impacts. Physical damage, which happens on construction sites, is pruning, breaking, and tearing of branches, tearing of the bark on the limbs, trunk or root crown, severing of roots, and damage from poison or other chemicals. Disturbance is compaction, running over the soil, compacting it, changes to soil depth, changes to drainage, and changes to soil chemistry. Causes of impacts include excavation, trenching, heavy equipment, material storage and transport, foot traffic, and concrete washout or leaching. Next slide. And here's some examples from some active construction sites where we see on the front, they do have wrapping around the tree, but fill right in the critical root zone, probably in the quarter critical root zone. There's cement washing out. Another site where a tree has soils next to it. The picture in the right-hand corner was likely done without a permit. That was spotted by one of the inspectors, and that is trenching inside the critical root zone of a couple of heritage oaks. And then the last picture on the bottom is fill and inadequate fencing. Next slide. Along with impacts in tree review, we're going to look at the existing impacts. And here's a good example of a residential house that the applicants needed to expand. We're going to look at existing impacts and matching those existing impacts, which would be no wider nor deeper. Your tree reviewer will help work this out with you. And here's a good example of existing calculated impacts. Next slide. So little about tree preservation criteria. You can find this figure on the right in the environmental criteria manual. It's widely adopted throughout the United States. It defines a critical root zone. Tree roots are usually much larger than a critical root zone, but this calculation is based on best practices and what it takes to keep a tree alive. So if you have a 20-inch tree, you're going to walk out 20 feet, and that's your full critical root zone. Inside that half critical root zone would be, in this example, 10 feet, and then inside the quarter would be 5 feet. So the critical root zone is a circle around the tree, the radius of feet and equal to the diameter in inches of the trunk. The half and the quarter are smaller circles within the CRZ, and the CRZ, critical root zone, is not extended to the tree root system. Next slide. What we are looking for in plan review, site plan review, residential plan review, And standalone tree permits, which I'll get into later, is criteria one, that no more than 50% of the total of the critical root zone may be impacted. Little example here, 50% impact, that would be not compliant, 30% impact, that would be compliant. And then we have a trenching and 60% impact. Unlike impervious cover, if you sever the arm and expect the hand to survive, it won't. So we're going to look at that trenching also in the impacts. Next slide. And then a little bit more in detail, we can provide anybody on this meeting with this impacts. We're looking at elevated foundations, impacts for existing impacts, new impacts. And then on the top, what we would have would be compliant for tree preservation criteria, and the bottom wouldn't be, and that includes, you know, some retaining wall or new impacts. And next slide. And then lastly, we'll look at the half critical root zone. And what we mean by this is the more sensitive area of the tree. We're going to keep that, need to keep that at 50% for that tree to survive. Look at 20% impact, 50% impact. That meets preservation criteria. And many folks think if they just fence or preserve the half critical root zone, it will meet preservation criteria, but it doesn't. It's at 75%. Next slide. And then our third preservation criteria is no more than 25% of the living crown may be removed. And more than that, it starts interfering with the biology and physiology of the tree itself. Next slide. Then we will talk about tree protection fencing, which is located in section 3, the environmental criteria manual. Fencing would be a 5-foot chain link on 8-inch steel posts. The entire critical root zone not approved for impacts are necessary for access. And mulch 8 inches deep, all unfenced areas of the critical root zone not approved for impacts, 3 inches deep in any area that's disturbed soil within the fencing. And then topping with decking inside the half critical root zone. And then we're looking for trench and branch wrapping only when the fence is within 5 feet of the trunk or when low branches are at risk of being struck by equipment. And do not secure the planking directly to the trunk. As the tree grows out, it starts to girdle the tree. Next slide. And then here's part of our team doing an air spading training. What we're going to look at is we have residential tree review. It's 19 inches and greater size trees, diameter are regulated. And then we're distributed on the plan review, and that's handled through residential applications. So you do want to mark yes if you have a tree 19 inches and greater on or on the adjacent property that the critical root zone extends to. On commercial multifamily projects, trees are regulated at 8 inches and greater. These include site plans, site plan exemptions, and corrections, and in the subdivision phase reviewed. We also have standalone tree permits. These are non-development related. Those are dead disease imminent hazard, frequently called DDI. We have emergency utility repair and replacement, non-construction related, those projects that are not subject to a building permit, or violation related. Next page. This is a good example. The plan set that was brought up by Austin, American Institute of Architects, Austin chapter. We collaborated with them on getting a nice templates. We have access to these templates on our webpage. So we review residential and site plan applications. We assess hazards for tree health and protected trees for proposed removal. We assign mitigation for approved removals, and we issue tree permits and approved site plans. Next page. Not all development applications will trigger a tree review. And you're going to work inside the critical root zone of a protected tree or propose to remove more than 25% of the crown, you will need a standalone tree permit. City Arborist review is not distributed on express or interior remodel building permits. However, you will still need to be compliant with the preservation criteria on these projects, and those include standalone trade permits, landscaping, or flat work. And any of these projects may require a standalone tree permit if you're going to potentially impact the critical root zone of a protected tree. And here's a good look at an old tree permit that was issued as part of a plan review. It's updated now, and we can go into that another time. Next slide. And on site plans, must have a licensed tree survey and are reviewed by city arborist staff. That's from a licensed land surveyor from the state of Texas that also surveys meets and bounds and other topological features. Those are required on commercial, multifamily, residential, and subdivision plans. And then the approved site plan is actually the tree permit. Next slide. One of the most frequent things that we see after storms is our dead disease imminent hazard. The fees are waived. No mitigation is required. That's in the Land Development Code. And they must pose a high risk to people or property within the next year. And on a note, only the city arborist or their designate may make a DDI determination. Next slide. After the plan review and building permit is issued, the compliance for preservation, what was approved on the plans, is turned over to the Environmental and Tree Inspections Division. They ensure that tree protection is in place at all times. The pruning does not exceed allowed limits. Special conditions identified on the permit or in the plan set are followed through. That no trees intended for preservation are removed, and the required mitigation is planted. And if you go to Environmental Inspections Division webpage, you can see the territories of the inspectors. Next slide. There is another part of the Environmental Inspections Division that is enforcement. Those enforcements are all done through 311. And the removal of a protected or heritage tree is a Class C misdemeanor. The environmental inspectors can write citations, issue affidavits, and inspectors can also issue enterprise code violations that can require mitigation, planting, or other measures to correct the violations. Next slide. And then for environmental tree inspections, enforcement 311, looks like this is a duplicate side. But most types of cases are initiated through the 311 report. Environmental code complaints can also require remedial tree care, mitigation, planting to restore the site to code compliance. Next slide. And I'll turn it back over to Ulysses.
Thanks so much, Naomi, and thanks so much to all of our subject matter experts for all the information you were able to provide to our attendees. We learned a lot about why we have permits and then trees, just overviewed information on what's required, what trees are regulated. So thank you so much for that, Naomi. And then we had fires and our experts on fires as to why some of the requirements to make sure that our folks at home are safe and that they meet the standards that Austin Fire needs to be able to keep all of us safe. If we can go to the next slide, please. We have 2 ways that you can participate. There's a few questions that have already been answered. So if you have the capability of taking a look at the Q&A function of Zoom, our staff members were able to go in. There's a few questions that were asked that have already been answered, including links to the websites that were mentioned or have already been shared. One of the websites that we shared was the homeowner permits website. We also shared residential plan review websites, and then the Do I Need a Permit Wizard We shared that link, so make sure to check out the questions in the Q&A portion to see which ones have already been answered. You can see some of those questions as well. And then we had one question in the chat that wasn't quite able to be copied on the Q&A portion, but we were asked, one of our participants asked, what happens if you buy a house and find out that past work had not been done according to codes or permits? Is it grandfathered? Would be something that need to be done to have it comply with code. And I don't think we have anybody from code compliance, but maybe Scott or Maria can talk about how those requirements would be grandfathered in, even if you buy a home that was not done up to permits.
So it is the responsibility of the property owner, regardless of when the work was done, to make sure that it's up to code. So it depends on each situation and the scope of work that was done. I would recommend that they schedule an appointment with maybe starting with Building and Trade Contractor Services to see if it's something that should be reactivated or what the next steps would be. But it is something that is the responsibility of the property owner.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for that question. As we get through, so it looks like we have answered all of the questions that we have so far. But as we get through and wait for maybe one more question that comes in, take some time to let us know how we did. We have those 2 QR codes. One of them takes you to a survey that asks you how we did. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what we can improve. We use this information to help improve our future sessions. And then join us at our next session at publicinput.com/info series. We have a few really informational and really exciting sessions coming up. Right now we had permit essentials, and next month we will be talking about expert mode. Some of the expertise you will need before you build. So we talk about what kinds of experts would be needed for your development project. And then in April, we have Scott again is joining us along with a few of his colleagues. This one we have inspection ready, what to know about inspections. There's multiple inspections that may happen on multiple stages that can impact your project. And so they're going to talk about the inspection process, why they're required, and then also some common reasons why some projects may get delayed. So make sure to check those out, add them to your calendar. That link has the registration link for you to register. And then take a look at our previous sessions as well at the bottom. You can take a look. We have a recording and the PowerPoints. I'll put it in the chat as well for some of our previous sessions. Take a look at them. We also post them on our public meetings page. Check them out. I'll put it in the chat so you can see them in the future. Appreciate everyone. With that, I don't see any more questions in the queue. Appreciate everybody for joining us this Tuesday morning, and I appreciate our experts, Maria, Naomi, Beth, Scott, Colin. Appreciate all the time. Yvonne for joining us as well, and Beth, thank you so much for all of the information that you have provided for us. For all of the helpful information, helpful rules that folks that are super important for the city of Austin. I'll also put the feedback form in the chat so y'all can, let me put everyone here, and then the PowerPoints, I'll put it in the chat as well. All right, with that, I will go ahead and close it out. I'll check y'all at the next one. Thank you so much and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, folks.